Money, it's supposed to be the coldest, most rational thing we've ever invented, right? I mean, it's just a simple, practical way to measure value. But ghosts, they belong to a realm that completely defies all reason. So, what exactly happens when these two totally opposing forces collide in our cultural folklore? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a really unsettling theme found in 19th century literature. We're going to see how Western ghost stories treat wealth not as a handy tool for the living, but as a heavy, rusted chain for the dead.
It's a pretty haunting thought, isn't it? What happens when the dead simply cannot leave their gold behind? We always hear the old saying, you can't take it with you. But in these specific European and Russian tales, the tragedy actually isn't that you leave your wealth behind. No, it's that your wealth refuses to let you go. It binds you. It literally traps you.
Section 1. The Wall of Wealth. When we look closely at Western folklore, we see it builds this towering, completely impenetrable wall between the living and the dead. And money? Well, money is used as the very mortar of that wall. In these stories, greed isn't just some human character flaw. It's a literal physical anchor that dams the soul. When a person becomes totally consumed by materialism, they are punished. The boundary between the mortal world and the afterlife is guarded fiercely, and crossing it with the stain of greed brings some absolutely terrible consequences. Section 2. The Mass of Shadows. To really grasp how this looks in practice, let's look at an incredibly melancholy case study from the French writer Anatole France. Picture this. It's the dead of night in a chilling stone church. Spirits return from the very edge of purgatory for a strange, totally silent midnight mass. Dead knights and ladies slowly file past the collection plate. And what are they dropping into it? Old coins. Currency that hasn't actually been valid in the living world for centuries. You see, these spirits were misers in life. They hoarded their wealth. And now they've returned to offer this invalid, completely useless currency. There's just this profound atmospheric sadness to the whole scene. Anatole France wrote that even in death, they cannot stop circling the gold they once hid, standing eternal guard over it. Think about that for a second. Their attachment to this cold metal is precisely the thing keeping them chained between worlds. They're trapped in this bleak, eternal loop, guarding a treasure that literally holds absolutely no earthly value anymore. Section 3. The Queen of Spades. Now, let's escalate the psychological dread a bit. We're traveling from the solemn stone churches of France over to the aristocratic card tables of 19th century Russia in Alexander Pushkin's dark, brilliant thriller, The Queen of Spades. Here, the horror is deeply psychological. We meet our protagonist, Herman. Now, Herman is a disciplined military engineer. He is thrifty, he's incredibly rational, basically a guy who strictly observes life, but never ever partakes in the chaos of the gambling halls. But then he hears a rumor about an old countess who possesses the ultimate secret, a sequence of 3 cards that will always, without fail, win at the table. And just like that, our deeply rational man is pushed into a fatal, all-consuming obsession. His rationality completely unravels. Herman becomes desperate to extract this secret, so he breaks into the old countess's room and threatens her. Well, the sheer terror of his intrusion is just too much for the old woman, and the shock actually kills her right there on the spot. So now Herman is left with a corpse and no secret. But later, in a truly terrifying twist, the ghost of the countess appears to him anyway, and from beyond the grave she reveals the 3 cursed cards. 3, 7, ace. These numbers become the absolute rhythm of his creeping descent into madness. 3, 7, ace. He's told that to win, he must only play 1 card a night. And then, he must never gamble again for the rest of his life. This sets up an agonizing tension over his final 3 nights at the Russian card tables. On the first night, Herman bets everything he has on the 3. And he wins. On the second night, he takes all of those winnings and bets them on the 7. He wins again. He is now a remarkably wealthy man. So on the final night, absolutely certain of his victory, he bets his entire massive fortune on the ace. He turns his card over, but the card in his hand is not the ace. It is the Queen of Spades, and as he stares in horror at the card, the drawn face of the queen actually seems to twist into the dead countess's mocking face, staring right back at him. In an instant, Herman is completely and utterly ruined. The wealth was a trap. He loses his fortune, and he loses his mind, doomed to just pace the halls of an asylum muttering 3-7 ace forever. Section 4. A devil's trap. Both the French misers and the Russian engineer show us something vital about cultural fears in the West. Wealth, when it becomes an obsession, is framed as a literal trap laid by the devil to destroy human reason. Now, this is a stark contrast to the Japanese folklore surrounding money that we explored in part 1. In Japanese tradition, money that behaves strangely is often given a comic yokai face. It becomes an eccentric, maybe slightly absurd neighbor, which kind of softens the boundary between the living and the dead. But in the West, money becomes a punishment. It's absolute proof of moral corruption. The West guards the boundary between life and death fiercely, treating greed as a fatal temptation. Section 5. The Boundary of Self. As we pull back from the gothic horror of haunted chapels and gaslit gambling halls, we arrive at the philosophical core of these tales. Ultimately, a ghost story about money reveals exactly how a culture draws the line between the self and the world. In the Western stories, the self must be protected from the corrupting influence of the material world. To surrender to greed is to basically surrender your humanity, your reason, and eventually your very soul. These stories act as a mechanism, a warning to keep our spiritual selves separate from the cold, rational, but ultimately damning nature of hoarded wealth. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to reflect upon. If the ghost stories we tell about money are really just reflections of our deepest anxieties, what does a culture truly fear will happen if the line between the self and the material world finally breaks? When you look at your own relationship with wealth, are you holding on to it, or is it holding on to you?